Traditionally, there would have been somewhere in the range of 30 to 40, depending on the time period. We have 4 that are standing in Wrangell right now.
They tie us to our ancestors and to our past.
We have totem poles because they tell the story about the clans. At the Guhit, the Mud Shark House, there's 4 house posts and they tell stories. One of the stories that they tell is about the Gona Kadeh, and that is a sea monster.
Kachchanag is their significance and their histories and the stories that they tell. There's many different stories pertaining to Wrangell about chief sheiks and the pole where they felt that a chief's remains were stored in a niche in the back. It caused a war. That's one thing.
They're not always story poles, but I think they help kind of start stories. Like when we make a new totem pole, that's always the beginning of new stories in my eyes. If I'm doing something that's older, like a pole or a story pole or an old replica or something, then those stories get to be told again and revived as well.
This one over here belongs to the Kiksadi, and it talks about their history, and somebody that was coming by into the village would be able to look at that and know who lives in the house in front of, or that the pole is in front of. A lot of times they would be put up in memory of somebody, and so we call those ones mortuary poles. So the Bear Up the Mountain and the Gunakadate pole are both mortuary poles. Traditionally, when someone would pass, they would be cremated, and their ashes would often be put into a totem pole, for example.
Then there was a totem pole that was stood up on Shakes Island in Wrangell that was called a shame pole, which was an unpaid debt. And then there are poles such as inside of Chief Shakes's house. Shakes Hiddy is the 4 house posts called Goss. And they tell the story of the house Guhit, and then the other one is Octopus Tentacle, a dogfish. The ones in the back, if I'm not mistaken, are Fogwoman and Gonakadate.
Over in the Nolan Center, there's those 4 house posts are from the 1770s, so those are actually older than the United States itself, which is kind of cool.
My favorite carver is Mike Hoyt. He is an apprentice carver and carving, and he's from Wrangell. Mike is young and is knowledgeable and is pursuing what he loves and likes, and for that reason, he's my favorite.
My very first project, I was probably in like 5th grade. I didn't touch carving again until maybe 2 years ago. I've worked on 4 poles now, so the Kadashan pole was my first. The Bear Up the Mountain and Gunakadate were my second and third, and this guy right here was my first as a solo artist. Working with a lot of support from other artists, of course, but I was kind of the one having to make the calls on a lot of this. I'm from a family of carvers. My great-great-great-grandpa was a carver. In fact, that totem out there and 2 of them in the next room are ones that he had carved. And then his son was a carver who worked on this screen as well as some of the other poles that are over there. My dad was a carpenter and his dad was a carpenter. For me, carving is a way of connecting to a lot of that family history. Traditionally, it would be a clan or a family would hire somebody to come and carve a pole for them. Nowadays, most poles are carved by organizations, like, so for example, the poles that we're carving are paid for by the tribe here, WCA, Wrangell Cooperative Association. It really depends on the size of the pole in terms of how long it takes to carve it. You know, this guy, the bulk of it was done probably in about a month, but then some of the finer detail stuff, like I've been wrestling with getting the fins just right for a couple weeks now, and so the biggest one that we've done so far was about 37 feet, and that took us about 80 days. I would say if you're estimating for a totem pole, I'd plan 3 or 4 months per pole. So for totem poles, you want to use red cedar, and red cedar has a couple benefits. The first is that they grow really, really large. It's really soft to carve compared to other types of wood. It doesn't crack as much, so like yellow cedar, it's soft, but it tends to crack and splinter a lot. Red cedar doesn't as much. And red cedar also is pretty rot resistant, and so they tend to last for a really long time. The primary ones are going to be chisels, adzes, and knives. The joke or the saying that we kind of have when we're deciding what to do on something is that you can't put the wood back. Think about carving is that you're making such small shavings at a time that when there is a mistake, it's not a huge one. You're able to sort of catch it before it kind of snowballs and becomes a bigger thing. Two different ways that you can raise a totem pole. I think the first, or the traditional way, would be that you would dig a really deep hole. The pole would have like a section that was not carved, and it would get raised up into the pole and basically just slide right in, and they would fill the edges back in. Nowadays, the most kind of commonly accepted way to do it is that you would pour a concrete base, have a metal beam sticking out of it, you'd raise the pole and it would sit up against that beam and you would bolt it in that way. Nowadays, we do kind of preserve them a little bit more, especially since carving was, at least for a time, sort of a dying art. Being able to preserve them and hold on to them and really study some of the works of the masters has allowed us to see how they did things. Traditionally, what would usually happen to a totem pole that was no longer in use is that they would get, they would come down and they would be, basically we call it like putting them to rest or putting them back into the earth, and they would just kind of naturally decompose. And that was just kind of the life cycle of a totem pole. Is that I think I've had a couple people teach me how to carve over my life. My dad taught me some things here and there, like as a learner, and my grandpa. Learning from other carvers like Joe and TJ Young, who were the master carvers that worked on these poles here. I think there's an element of learning, looking at the old poles and trying to figure out, well, how did they do this or how did they do that? Look at the work of William Ucass in particular and really try to emulate a lot of his work. Son, Tom Ucass, I have his Tlingit name, Akdatsin, and so I look at his work a lot. My favorite historical carver is a man called Kajistu Achch.
The story of Kajistu Achch, the second from down at Casatlan, Old Wrangell, is the one that carved those old house posts that you can see inside the Wrangell Museum that stand there behind the plexiglass. And those stories, and those are considered some of the oldest poles in Alaska.
My favorite carver is Kajistu Achch III. That is Steve Brown, who redid the house posts down at the Chief Shake's house, and he carved them along with Wayne Price. And one was left-handed, one was right-handed, so they each got to carve each house post at the same time, one on one side and one on the other.
Have something that you have a passion in, and you could make it work if you put if you're really into it. And like I was with carving, I was your guys' age, right? And that's when I started, and ever since it's gotten me to be able to travel and meet people, and I'm able to make some money off of it, and I'm able to, you know, do all this because I just kind of followed that passion that I had. And don't ever like stray too far away from your passion, whatever it is.
Yeah.